So if you have any questions or comments, please just chat them on the side, and in a few minutes we'll get going. And I will spend 2 or 3 minutes just doing a brief introduction to Starweaver and handing it off. I'm Paul Siegel. Nasser is going to be doing the facilitation and presentation today. Leading expert in the field of ITIL, and he can tell you a little about himself as well. If you have questions, obviously happy to entertain them at any time. So it just turned 12, and I think the best thing to do will be to start the discussion and set the presentation going. I just want to make sure this is properly being done. Okay, great. So again, this is a 45 to 60-minute webinar on ITIL. It's supposed to be interactive and highly discussion-oriented, so Nasser may ask questions or engage you, and please do feel free to ask questions, make comments, and either in the chat box or by voice. Let me just make sure you can see the screen moving. You can. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Starweaver. We've been around in the training business for over 16 years, focused on IT and project management and finance training. So fintech is a large part of our business, as well as just pure technology companies. We work with many of the largest companies in the world. You see some of the names here. These are people we work with in their local countries, as well as in the U.S. and Canada and elsewhere. A lot of what we do is, as I said, IT, enterprise IT, project management, but there's also a component that's focused on business skills. Everything we do is towards large companies and their employees. We do have a large library of online courses that can be done in a matter of 10 minutes to an hour, but there are others that are multi-part and multi-length. These are all, whether they're recorded and online or live like you're participating now, they're all hands-on interactive. They're all taught by practitioners with extensive experience, just like Nasser, or comparable in the way that they're not only just facilitators that had a lot of experience in the field, so everything that is being discussed is practical and practically oriented. We have some upcoming webinars, the one today and then 2 next week before the holidays, and then we'll have a comprehensive schedule going into January. But today's is on ITIL, as you probably know, Internet of Things at home, talking about IoT and how it relates to homes, and then a best practice IT frameworks again on the 15th. Here are some of the courses that you're going to be able to access if you complete the survey, which I sent on the right. Obviously, you'll see a lot of fintech content. I highly recommend number 1. Don't need to memorize this list. Just complete the survey. Again, that's SurveyMonkey plus, if you want to just take a picture of your screen or write that letter number combination down, and otherwise just look on the right side of the link. So I'm going to pass it over to Nasser now, and he'll be able to take you through the content and open it up to questions and everything else that you might want to discover and discuss. Nasser?
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everybody. My name is Nasser El-Batal. I've been in the IT industry for the last 28 plus years. My subject matter expertise is pretty much best practices for IT service management, enterprise architecture, governance and control, plus international standard 20,000, 27,000, and a few others as well. Historically, I've been involved in consulting, coaching, and training a number of different organizations over the years, from mom-and-pop shop to NASA and the likes, in the capacity, again, of either consulting or training or coaching, depending on the opportunity at hand. Specifically, I grew up in data centers and eventually got into application management and project management, and landed in IT best practices, been there since. So it's been quite a roller coaster and quite a journey so far. Discussion today around ITIL and the ITIL service lifecycle approach Very quickly, some of you may or may not heard about ITIL, but ITIL is one of those best practices that are highly adaptable. Initially, the framework began in the UK by the UK government, and over the years since 1980, it went through a number of different evolutions from version 1 to where we are today. They call it version 2011. Technically speaking, this is version 3.1, but for whatever reason, they had a good drink the night before and they decided to call it version 2011 because that's the last update in the year 2011. So today, ITIL is following a service lifecycle model where, as you're going to see, it begins with the service strategy and continues all the way to continual service improvement and everything in between. The subject matter itself is worldwide accepted. It's been there since, as I mentioned, the mid-'80s. Many organizations, thousands of organizations, have seen the benefits in using ITIL and IT service management best practices at large, be it government or private industry sectors, doesn't really matter. The subject matter is associated with a scheme of certifications that spans, multiple layers from foundation all the way to a master level, and we're going to see some of this a little bit later. Also, it provides you pretty much the guidance on the different aspects of the service life cycle. So this is something, again, that is highly adaptable. You can tweak, adjust, make it relevant to your organization, and blend it into something else, and create your own, if you want to call, framework or standard to follow within your business. The subject matter is based on 5 books. So the term ITIL stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. The library in this case are the 5 books plus whatever complementary information that is available in the market by people like you and me and other organizations and so on. This is, by the way, something that will no longer be available as at the end of this year. There will be no more complementary value-added products pushed by Axelos or anyone else in the ITIL community because they realize that it's beginning to dilute the benefits or the focus of the subject matter. So they decided to stick to what ITIL is and the benefits, the guidance, the processes that ITIL introduces, and deal with. So we have 5 books: strategy, design, transition, operation, and continual service improvement. Service strategy guidance is the focal point for everything else that we do. This is where basically you establish your vision, your business outcome, your service value. This is where you set up, what kind of services you're going to establish in support of the business, and then you move on from there to service design, where you're going to architect the services in question, and of course you need to consider the service itself, of course, the technology, the architecture, the measurements, and the processes associated with the service. Also, you need to consider people, process, tools and technologies, and partnerships, all of which are, as we call them, considerations, as part of your service design discussion. What service design is going to generate is what we call a service design package. In other words, your architecture-related documentation, which goes to the service transition phase. The service transition phase will then build, test, and implement. Along the way, they will establish controls. They will establish basically the new service or the modified service, the knowledge transfer, the subject matter expertise, and what we call early life support to enable operation to basically deliver as expected. Early life support is going to be provided as an output to service operation, which includes the new service, the training, the manuals, the support if needed, right, until your service operation staff is capable to run with the delivery on their own. And in service operation, this is where we do the day-to-day delivery and management of people, process, technology. And this is also where all those guys, that I have on the diagram are part of the different functional groups that basically are also associated with the service operation phase. As a result of your service operation, you are basically generating performance reports to show the level of effectiveness and efficiency in correlation with, as an example, service level agreements or contracts that you might have. And depending on that, you can invoke your continual service improvement to improve services at different levels and or different layers. Mind you that continual service improvement is not limited only to the phase here as the last phase. You're going to be doing improvement throughout the entire life cycle as you go from phase to phase. But this is, for those big improvement projects, if you wish. In a nutshell, those are the different phases of the service life cycle. And below, at the bottom of the screen, we're showing you the different functional groups. We're all familiar with the service desk. And then you have technical management, operation management, and application management, where you have your engineers, your architects, your technical people, and so on and so forth. So this one slide kind of gives you the overall 50,000 feet view as to what ITIL looks like. But then we get into what really ITIL looks like in terms of the processes associated with each of the phases. Before going through that, any questions that I can answer for you with relationship to what I provided so far?
None for me, Nasser.
All right. So the slide at hand is what we call the service life cycle big picture. So this is one slide that tells it all kind of thing. If you take a look at the top side of it, where this is, of course, where business and or customers, might generate requirements, and that requirement is going to, depending on the type of requirement, would either go through the change management process or service strategy or service request. The bottom line is that we do have a requirement. So the usual approach is that before we start dealing with any of these things, we need to establish the proper structure. So we need to have the proper governance, and this is where we have the IT steering group. And we need to establish the appropriate set of processes that you're going to follow within the organization or within, if you are a provider, within your customer organization. So we established the different phases, 5 phases, and under each one of them, you have the associated number of processes for that phase. On the left-hand side, you notice the service portfolio and the service catalog. The service portfolio is basically a critical success factor for what you're doing as an IT organization, because it does list all the different services that you have, at different levels. Services that you have basically at your strategic level, or that you have at the service catalog level, or that you have at a retired level. So depending as to where those services belong in your portfolio is going to reflect on how you're going to deal with it within the service life cycle approach. So when we're talking as an example on services, at the pipeline level, that means are still being strategized and still being considered. There is no definitive answer about them as of yet. But services that may be in the catalog, these are things that you're already basically delivering to your customers or about to deliver to your customers. And finally, you've got the retired services where, either you're not going to use them anymore, or you're going to decommission them, or you're simply cannot get rid of them, but you don't want to keep on offering them to the market, so you're hiding them from your catalog. As you notice, under service strategy, we have a number of different processes that will establish, as an example, in strategy management. This is where we're going to establish what our strategy is going to look like, what our value proposition is going to look like, who is our market, why, us and not somebody else, what's going to differentiate us from, everyone else. And then from there on, you establish your business relationship with your customers. Business relationship management is the process that will basically set up and or manage and coordinate the relationship with all of your customers. You want to stay close to them. You want to make sure that you have a good understanding of their needs, of their benefits, of their requirements, of their satisfactions, and so on. Demand management is the process that will understand where the demand is being initiated or coming from, and also will give us a great deal of input to capacity management so that we can address the level of capacity required based on the demand. Portfolio management is just to manage what I just talked about in portfolio side of things. And financial management is to make sure, of course, that you manage and you handle budgets, IT costing, charging, right, and address any sort of financial business impact, provide controls on what you can and cannot deliver depending on financials, just to mention a few. The end result of all of this discussion, right, is what we call chartered service or services. The SLP stands for service level package. This is the older definition, so this should be chartered services. This is what's going to go to service design, where service design is going to architect basically how the service is going to look like, or to be more accurate, is to design what the service is going to look like. Now, there are two angles to service design. One is relevant to the type of agreement. So as an example, when we talk about supplier management, service level management, catalog management, these processes are relevant to different types of agreements, and these agreements, of course, are associated with the different types of services and will offer you, either a standard service targets or negotiated, right, services and service targets, depending whether you are internal or external client. So this is where you start discussing if you're delivering based on service level agreement or based on contractual agreement. The other set of processes relevant to service design are the processes related to what we call warranty. So in the ITIL world, there's a concept where you establish value, and value is based on two main factors: utility, or the service functionality, and warranty, or the service stability. And here we're looking at the warranty aspect, to ensure that the service is up and running, doing what it's supposed to do, have the proper capacity, have the level of security required, right, and so on. So with that in mind, excuse me, with that in mind, the output of all of this activity is going to be collected in what we call a service design package. So the design coordination process at the top of the list in service design is the process that is responsible to collect all the relevant information that it should be in your design package. And this is basically what you're going to be forwarding to service transition. So service transition can begin to deal or begin to build, test, implement, right, the services required. Now, in service transition, as you notice, we have also a number of processes. Service design package is going to be received by the transition plan and support process. This is the process responsible to ensure that whatever designs you are working on is going to be delivered, right, all the way through to operation. Other processes, release and deployment, is the process that will build, test, and implement, with, of course, correlation of validation and testing and change evaluation. You have your change management process, like any other change management, where you need to control the changes to your services and infrastructure. And then asset and configuration management process, which will be the process that will account for all of your assets, right? And make sure that you have the appropriate records reflecting of all of this, again, all of this asset that you have in the infrastructure. One last process here is the knowledge management process that will basically ensure that you have readily available information to enable you to make the proper decision at the right time by the right people. At the very bottom of the slide, you notice that we have service knowledge management system, which is a set of integrated tools that will deal with knowledge, that will deal with configuration, that will deal with changes, that will deal with many aspects of the IT service management framework. There is an overlap between transition and operation, as you notice, and the overlap is through the early life support that I talked about. And basically, service transition team is making sure that everything is up to par before operation can take over. Once operation has taken over, then you need to manage, any abnormalities, so any incidents, right, that happen. Any problems which are incidents with an unknown underlying cause. You're going to deal with requests, service requests, through the request fulfillment process. So these are things that are predefined, pre-agreed, pre-approved, right? Things that are going to happen routinely. So we know and we agree to the associated risk, and we deal with it accordingly. And then other processes to deal with things like username and password, or user rights and granting user rights and so on, as well as event management, which includes managing the event but also monitoring the event. As part of service operation, in the pink boxes at the bottom of the screen, you see the different functions, right? Functional groups that I talked about in the previous slide. So these functional groups are also part of your project teams if and when you are working and or introducing or modifying any of your new or existing services. You notice at the top of the screen there is a green arrow, we call it SLR. That stands for service level requirement. So by service design, when you establish under service level management your service level agreement with your customer, you need to actually keep it open until such a time where the pilot has been successfully completed, because potentially there is a need to revisit, right, and to tweak and adjust those requirements. So this is why we kind of show an end-to-end opening for service level requirements. Eventually, you do a pilot for your service and for your SLA, and once you make sure that it's working, then you move on to the live environment, and you start accounting for improvement in the process. So in a nutshell, this is ITIL in one slide. Any information that I can clarify or questions that I can answer for you? Anyone?
Nothing from my side, Nestor.
So with this in mind, this is just a quick example in terms of a number of different topics that I covered, like the business relationship management, the service portfolio, the relationship between the service portfolio and different business units, because now we're listing the different services that's going to support and or enable these different business units, where you can deal with service level agreements or operational level agreements. So within the IT department, you see we have an OLA. So this is an internal agreement to set the stage on how we're going to work together, versus at the bottom where we say UC or underpinning contract. This is a contract between what we call external IT and internal IT. So that's a vendor, right, versus internal IT, which your IT department, right? Just to give you an idea on the different relationship that you may be establishing as a result of following, the ITIL service lifecycle and related processes. The benefit of having ITIL in place where service management is concerned is that it's really going to assist and help you in increasing your maturity, not just process maturity, but also IT organization maturity. And this is a quick example on what we call the CMMI and the different maturity levels associated with it. Level 1, as you see, where basically we don't have a whole lot going for us. Everything is either loosely defined, or there is no process, or there are no resources, or there is no ownership, and so on. Where level 2, it's a little bit better. So now we start identifying roles, responsibilities, process flows, etc. Level 3 is much better, right, in terms of, again, roles and responsibilities and processes, approaches. And level 4 and level 5 become at the top of the line, where everything is kind of in tip-top shape. We have the accountabilities, the responsibilities, the process, the tools, the integration, just to say a few. The dotted red line and the purplish line, in other words, level 3, is where I would say most of the organization are hovering between level 2 and level 3. What you're really, where really you want to be, rather, you want to be at level 3 and up, right? So the purple line is to show you once you get to level 4 and level 5, you know, you've got it made, as they say, but now it becomes a challenge to stay at that level. Most organizations hover at 2.5 or so, where the red line is, right? But that really does not reflect a great deal of maturity. So you really want to go beyond that. And in order to go beyond that, you need to implement something like ITIL. Now, when we're talking about ITIL implementation, just to give you a heads up that ITIL alone is not going to do it for you. You need to supplement ITIL with something else. Depending on your business needs and requirements, you may need enterprise architecture, or you may need COBIT, or you may need Lean, or you may need something else next to it, right? Just to keep that in mind. The approach should actually follow what we call continual cycle of improvement. This model enables you to do a number of things. It enables you to have a roadmap, a high-level roadmap to implementing ITIL. Where do you start and how you go about it? But also, it's also used for, you know, the improvement cycle. So either or, you can follow it if you want to implement or if you want to improve. First and utmost, you want to keep in mind that you want to know what your strategy or vision is, and then figure out your baseline and your desired state and how you're going to get there, and how do you know that you actually arrive to the desired state. And even after everything is said and done, you want to make sure that you keep your momentum going. This is not something that it's done once. This is an iterative process that never stops. The moment you stop, you start sliding back down in maturity. So you want to keep that in mind. Areas that you may be affecting and or impacting within your organization when you introduce something like ITIL, of course, is people, process, technology, but also something very useful is for management to be on board. Without their buy-in and commitment, it's going to be very difficult because you're not going to get the budget, you're not going to get the resources, and you're going to keep on hitting the wall every time you need to do something or another, right? So when you have management on board, then, you know, it would be much easier to move forward with the program and to sustain it over time as well. In terms of certification, before moving certifications, any clarification on what I covered so far? All right. So, and by the way, if anybody has any sort of questions or clarifications after the fact, please communicate with Paul, and I'm sure he'll let me know, and I will gladly answer your questions. In terms of certifications, the scheme for ITIL is what you see on the screen. You begin with foundation. You don't have to do practitioner. It depends. Actually, you don't have to do any of them. It really depends on where you want to be. If you want to be at the practitioner level or you want to be at the expert level. So if you want to be at the practitioner level, then you have the two sides, the blue and the pink side. The blue side is where the exam is based on that one book, right? And that's for management purpose. The pink side is where the exam is based on multiple topics from multiple books, and this is for the practitioner side. So if you want to be a practitioner or at an intermediate level, then you either do the blue or the pink, and you have to have the foundation as a prerequisite. If you want to become an expert, then you have to add managing across the life cycle for the mix. If you want to become a master, then you have to have everything that we talked about plus an 8-month, paper thesis that you need to write, and you need to get the interviews about, and you need to be able to answer questions, and you revisit, and so on and so forth. So there is a number, right, of steps in order to get to that level. So it really depends on where you want to be eventually at the certification level. And these are some examples of different titles and roles and responsibilities associated with the subject matter. So as you can see, if we throw let's say the process owner as an example, then the process owner has to be certified at all the different levels, right? Because they need to have a solid understanding as to what ITIL is all about, right? And they need to understand the dependencies, they need to understand the correlation, they need to understand everything there is to understand about it. Similar, we have other roles and responsibilities that you may find useful, and also what are the associated certifications for these titles, right? Depending on the phase or the level that they're working in. You notice here when we're talking about first, second, third level support, right? It's very important to be certified at service operation. Third level support at times, depending if they are actually also owning or managing a process, then they need to be certified at many other levels that you see below. So these are just kind of for your information, and because a lot of people have questions about, well, I don't know what I need to be certified as. Here's my title, but I don't know what certification I should get. Well, this hopefully can help you a little bit on establishing these different certifications. Any questions that I can answer for you guys? This is, in a nutshell, the introduction to the subject matter. And, of course, it would be a pleasure to answer any questions for you if you do have them.
Nasser, my question is, how broadly implemented? You mentioned there are lots and lots of organizations, but when ITIL is implemented at a large organization, a bank, an IT shop, a manufacturing organization, is it pervasive? Is it pervasive?
Well, I mean, it really depends on, of course, how you're going to introduce it, right? You want to make sure that whatever it is that you're introducing has to align with your business needs and your business goals and objectives. And this is why it's very important to actually tailor the framework to your business. This is not a cookie-cutter approach. This is not something that is associated with all kind of procedures already kind of straight out of the book. You have to work at this, right? Having said that, you also may use your existing staff. In some cases, they're going to wear multiple hats as long as there are no conflicts, in the roles and responsibilities that they are using and or following. So yes, it is throughout the industry. As I said, I mean, from NASA all the way down to mom and pop. And you know what? It's not just a North American thing. I spent a lot of time in Europe on this. I spent a lot of time in Asia Pacific, introducing, coaching, consulting, with the subject matter as well. So it doesn't really matter what kind of organization it is, as long as there is an IT service management practice, or as long as you have an IT department, then it's applicable. As simple as that, right? And you find it in universities, in government, in hospitals, in like from stock exchange to USDA to NASA to Boeing to and so on and so forth, right?
And is there the equivalent of a PMO office that manages the ITIL flavor and the ITIL implementation and adherence and guidance?
So yeah, so there is. I really wouldn't want to call it PMO because PMO is PMO, and one of the programs that PMO is going to also manage is an ITIL implementation. But within ITIL itself, there is something we call the ISG, or the IT Steering Group. And if you want to compare it to the PMO, but it's really more on governance rather than implementation topics. So you still need to use a project management methodology, whether it's PMBOK or Prince2 or whatever it is, PMO driven, in order to implement the subject matter. But within the subject matter, there is the governance that you need to ensure as well, and that's based on the IT Steering Group.
Thank you. So unless there are any other questions, I think that was a phenomenal presentation, Nasser. Thank you very much. Again, if there are questions, obviously feed them back to us. You know how to reach us by our website, starweaver.com. You can always get those to Nasser, and he can revert to you. Again, I recommend that you complete the survey. It'll give you an access to a free online course in a variety of subjects. And once again, thank you very much, Nasser, and thank you for everyone else being here. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, and take care.